Welcome to That Canceled Movie Show. I'm your host, G-Mac, joined by my roommate/intern, Jimmy.
I prefer my Fremen name, James Deeb.
You really went method for this one, didn't you, Jim? I mean, James Deeb.
Your poor stillsuit discipline will be the death of you. I shall reclaim your water for the tribe.
Right. In our first two-part series, we are going to be reviewing David Lynch's 1984 movie, Dune, and compare it to Frank Herbert's novel of the same name. And, as an added bonus, in part 2, we will be breaking down the new Dune 2020 trailer. But first, I need some water.
You are not prepared for the desert, off-worlder. Water is lacking on Arrakis.
Jimmy, we're not on Arrakis. We have enough water.
That will soon change.
What? How did we get here?
Only Shai Hulud knows.
So thirsty.
Take this.
Thank you, James Deeb. I owe you my life.
Our water will mix. We are now of the same tribe.
Jimmy.
Fremen.
Jimmy.
James Deeb. I won't fail you, my Fremen brothers.
Wake up. We need to start the show.
But what of Arrakis, the Dune planet? I foresee people subscribing to this channel and leading a holy war in my name. James Deeb.
I think those green orbs were stronger than we thought. Spoiler alert for Dune 1984 and all other Dune-related media. Going into this movie, I was so excited. I hadn't seen it since I was but a wee babe back in the 1990s when my older brother showed it to me. I remember thinking it was the coolest movie I've ever seen, but that could have been due to the fact that I was hanging out with my cooler older brother. I vaguely remember the giant sandworms and the weirdness of all the characters. I even remember getting a hand-me-down sandworm toy that belonged to my brother. TLDR, I was smitten with the Dune universe and all its sci-fi wonder.
I'm smitten with this new spice cake recipe I found.
Fast forward to last year. I'm in a bookstore, and I saw a vision of a distant desert planet. And there it was, the cover of Frank Herbert's Dune. I started reading it as soon as I could, and I was instantly transported to that formative memory from my childhood.
Mix in 4 green eggs.
I finished the book, a masterpiece. So I decided to rewatch David Lynch's 1984 movie. But by Paul Muad'Dib, I was disappointed. That'll teach me to revisit beloved childhood memories.
Add 1 cup water of life.
There's a sort of prologue where a Space Guild navigator meets with Emperor Shaddam IV, and I was surprised to say the least. Because in the first book, Duke Leto Atreides mentions that the navigators are so secretive they don't even show themselves to their own men. But the Guild navigator wants the Emperor to kill Paul. But this plot is taken from the second book, Dune Messiah, where a Space Guild navigator named Edric conspires with others to murder Paul. And the way the creature looked was not how I imagined. Although the creature effects were amazing and creepy in a Lynchian fashion, I imagined it to look more like this. The first hour of the film introduces us to the Atreides, who live on a water-rich planet called Caladan. They are tasked to take over Arrakis, or Dune as it's called by the locals, from an enemy house led by Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, so they can oversee the spice production. This is exactly like the novel. It even has Princess Irulan's narration, which in the original novel were excerpts from her manual on Muad'Dib. However, it seemed like Lynch wanted to stay faithful to the source novel, that it actually played out like a book on screen. The imagery was cool, but most of the time it was just people talking to each other, and there was a lot of exposition, and it wasn't all that compelling. There comes a point where Paul Atreides, played by Kyle MacLachlan, and Gurney Halleck, played by Sir Patrick Stewart, do some shield training.
Hey boss, it looks like this recipe comes with a shield toy like from the movie.
But the VFX for these energy shields did not age well, or it was never good in the first place. They were so opaque and blocky, you couldn't even see what the characters were doing. They eventually come to a stalemate with their blades, and Gurney explains to Paul that a slow-moving blade can pierce a shield.
How am I supposed to bake in this thing? Hey boss, did you see that? It actually worked!
Sure it did, Jimmy. And also, I didn't really care for the portrayal of Paul and Gurney's relationship. In the novel, although Gurney is Paul's instructor, they are depicted as being really good friends. But in the movie, it didn't really build on it enough for my liking. During our time on Caladan, we are introduced to Paul's mother, Jessica, who's played by Francesca Annis. She is a Bene Gesserit and a concubine of Duke Leto. But since she fell in love with him, her boss, Reverend Mother Gaius Mohaim, told her to only have daughters because she lost her privilege to give birth to the Kwisatz Haderach, the prophesied super being. But obviously she didn't do that because love finds a way, and birthed Paul.
That's what I always say when I'm baking.
Because you put your love into your work?
No, I name all my cakes Paul because it feels like I give birth to them.
Well, to test to see if he is the super being, the Reverend Mother tests Paul with a gum jabar, a poison needle, and a pain-inducing box. And this sequence is very similar to the events depicted in the novel. I enjoyed the imagery of Paul imagining his hand melting and burning. It helped visualize what were originally his thoughts in the book.
I don't think I mixed the ingredients right.
So Paul passes the test, and the Reverend Mother thinks he is the Crash Tash Hash Brown. The Atreides make it to Dune, and they meet Liet Kynes, played by Max von Sydow, who is the Imperial Planetologist, or the head of the EPA on Arrakis. He explains the inner workings of the stillsuit to Duke Leto and Paul. And this is done through exposition, but it's warranted because the stillsuit is such a foreign concept. And during this exchange, Kynes notes that Paul already knew how to put on the stillsuit and knew how it worked, and he thinks he will know our ways.
Oh, it seems like fire was part of the recipe. All good here, boss.
And this is all in the book, where it explains that Kynes has gone native and is the secret leader of the Fremen, the native people of Dune. Now, up until this point, the pacing was good. A little slow, but it wasn't boring in my opinion. But as soon as we get to Dune,
it's like someone hit the fast forward button on the remote and didn't tell anyone.
The events that follow all happen in the book. The Harkonnens come back and take over Dune from the Atreides, killing Duke Leto, and Paul and Jessica entering the tribe to become Fremen. But this first major battle sequence aged about as well as those shield effects. I honestly didn't care about anyone who was dying because the camera was so far away from the action. And I get this is to show the scale of the battle, but it stays there the whole time, until we see Paul being spirited away by some Harkonnens, and they unceremoniously kill off Duncan Idaho. In the book, Duncan escapes with Paul and Jessica until they are cornered in a Fremen siege by the Emperor's death troopers, the Sardaukar. He then heroically sacrifices himself to allow Paul and Jessica to escape. But in the film, he does like this WWE body slam, which looked like it came out of the 1960s Batman TV show. And then he's killed by a bullet to the head. And this whole time he's wearing the shield, so you can't even see his emotion or anything. And another thing, they didn't really explain the shields that well in the movie, but in the book they explain that they'll block traditional weapons, but if you shoot a firearm at it, it'll explode like a nuclear bomb. So that idiotic Sardaukar would have killed everybody, although that would have solved his problem of killing Paul and Jessica. Maybe that was his plan all along. But back to the pacing. This sequence was supposed to be intense, but it just felt flat and rushed. And there really wasn't any build-up to it at all. It just kind of happens.
Cake's done. Want a slice, boss?
After the episode, and Paul and Jessica escape and meet the Fremen led by Stilgar, as fans of Lynch's other work, Twin Peaks, will recognize, and Chani, played by Sean Young of Blade Runner fame, and they're allowed to join the tribe. And Paul is given the tribe name Usul and the public name Paul Muad'Dib. But this felt unnatural to me, because in the novel, Paul picks the name Muad'Dib, but the Fremen question this because they say it's the name of a desert mouse. And Paul says that although this mouse is small, it is adapted to survive on this harsh desert planet. And this shows that he understands Arrakis and the Fremen more than just picking a name out of a hat, like it appears in the film. And another requirement for admission into the tribe, the Fremen want them to teach them the weirding way.
No, it's called CQC, a basic form of close quarters combat,
which is a specialized hand-to-hand combat that the Bene Gesserit know. But in the film, voice guns. Dumbest thing I've seen in a while. It works by having a module attached to the throat, and it converts vocal patterns into sonic blasts. But save for the times when they show stone exploding when they're practicing, the rest of the time it looks like grown men playing cops and robbers because nothing comes out of the gun, and a lot of the editing doesn't have a cause-effect relationship. Should have stuck with the martial arts, but Lynch didn't want kung fu on sand dunes. Is that a bad thing? Jessica is also tasked to become the Reverend Mother of the Fremen tribe, but it's not explained why in the movie. In the novel, it is said that the Bene Gesserit had planted seeds all throughout the galaxy to build a cult following for themselves. And one of these cults? The Fremen. So they have Jessica drink the water of life, which is a liquid excreted by young sandworms and is highly poisonous. But since Jessica is a Bene Gesserit, she can control her bodily functions so well that she can filter out the poison and comes out on the other side unscathed. But she was pregnant with the Duke's unborn daughter. And you're not supposed to do this ritual if you're pregnant because of the effects on the baby. The baby, Aaliyah, is born fully cognizant, and she has all the memories of her ancestors and all the other Reverend Mothers, and she is called an abomination for being an intelligent, murderous baby. And Paul also decides to drink the water of life, and he gets the power of prescience, and it gives him the ability to see into the past and the future. All of a sudden, we're fast forwarded 2 years. Paul is the leader of the Fremen, and they're leading raids against the Harkonnens to disrupt their spice production, because spice is love. Spice is life.
You can say that again.
What in the Lynchian hell is going on, Jimmy?
What do you mean, Blue Boss?
I'm not blue, your eyes!
Oh, must have been the spice cake. Yeah, they said something about that. And another thing called prescience?
Did you get this recipe from a Dune fan club?
No, and to answer your next question, I found it at a thrift store called, Tradies.
I mean, you could have guessed that was...
You could have guessed that was my next question.
Maybe I'll take that piece now. Ah! I can see the future. This review is being derailed by a terrible attempt at sketch comedy. Oh, wait. That's happening now. Ugh. All of a sudden, Paul meets Gurney in a battle, but their reunion is just bulldozed by the breakneck pace of the movie. And eventually, they reach the Harkonnen stronghold, and the Emperor is there as well to stop Paul. Aaliyah kills the Baron, and Paul becomes a god. Literally, making it rain on a desert planet. But this isn't what Herbert intended for Paul. He wanted him to be a man playing God, not an actual one. He wanted to show the fallibilities of those in power, even those well-intentioned, such as Paul. But that happens in the sequels, and we won't get into that here. Since we're called Back Cancelled Movie Show, not Book Time with Gigi and Jim Bob. So if you've never read the novel, this movie will be a confusing mess. However, I did enjoy the performances from those involved, especially Kenneth McMillan, who played the Baron Harkonnen. He was so vile and disgusting, perfect villain. Actually, Baron Harkonnen is one of my favorite villains of all time, and the set pieces and the costumes were excellent, and the oppressive industrial environment of the Harkonnen homeworld, Gaiety Prime, looked amazing. But the writing is not a strong point for this movie, especially when it comes to Jessica. In the movie, she's depicted as an emotional wreck who can't help herself unless the plot requires it. In the novel, she is a strong character who has emotions but does not succumb to them so easily, which went against popular depictions of women at the time since she was so level-headed. So in the movie, when she's depicted as weak and emotional, it really took away from how well written her character was in the first place. But another awesome thing in the movie was the creature effects for the sandworms. That was my fondest memory of the Dune universe. And one more thing, the music. It was done by Toto, so I guess that rain at the end of the film was blessed by them. And for the most part, it's a good fit for the movie, except for this one guitar riff during the worm riding sequence. It's just super cheesy. It did not fit the tone. If I had to give a recommendation, I would not. Skip this movie. Even if you've read the novel, it's not going to make it any better, just easier to understand. But I wholeheartedly recommend the book series. I'm on book 3 right now, and it is glorious. But for part 2, we will break down the trailer and compare it to the novel, and see if we can tap into our own powers of prescience.
From now on, you will call me James D.
I'd rather not. And you really need to reevaluate the way you choose your foodstuffs. Last week it was the green orbs, now it's these magic spice cakes.
I remember when I was a non-believer, like my friend Sharon Hall.
Are you referring to Shai-Hulud, the Fremen word for sandworm?
No, my friend Sharon Hall, who introduced me to the store, Tradies.
That sounds like a cult.
Farthest thing from it. All you have to do is sign in your blood and you can take whatever you want off the shelves.
That's a cult.
Well, it got me this tasty recipe and all the ingredients. What kind of cult gives you free food?
All the cults. Okay, that's it for this episode of That Cancelled Movie Show, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss part 2. And tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. And a quick shout out to Fort Collins Public Media for helping me produce this episode. Alright, I'll see you next time.